What's shaking, my friends? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Shay, and today we're going to talk about intimidating books. What makes a book intimidating, and why can't we just put down our fear and read those books? So for me, there are several factors that make a book intimidating. So let's talk about factor number one, and this is probably the most obvious factor and the most probably popular factor of intimidating books. And that's going to be the length, because y'all, it is so hard, and I don't know what about it. Like, okay, for instance, it is so hard to say, hey, I'm going to pick up this 1,000-page book and I'm going to read it. When I know that I read a lot more than 1,000 pages a month, but for some reason I cannot get my head to read it all in one book. So, for instance, one day I did that and I picked up The Ember Blade. It's 800 and some odd pages. I loved it. And this was my favorite book of 2022. Talk about another big chunker that I loved, Priority. Like, I picked it up finally and I said, hey, I'm going to read this large book. And I did it and loved it. So tell me why, folks, that I have not picked up The Way of Kings yet. I own every book in the series. I keep this book, every year I say, this is going to be the year. This is going to be the year I pick this book up and read it. And every year I fail myself. So what is so intimidating about picking this book up and reading it? Likewise, another lengthy book that I would like to pick up and read, Legacy of Ash by Matthew Ward, which I've owned for some time, but it sits on my shelf. And will it ever be picked up and be read? I don't know. Like, why am I buying these books if I'm not planning on reading them? And plus, this is really floppy and I like to read them. There are, of course, a lot of other long series I want to read. Another thing that comes with intimidating books for me that may make it intimidating is because the series is not finished. I'm very intimidated to start it. And of course, you know, our two big contenders in this category, Patrick Rothfuss, Name of the Wind, and of course, that old GRM with Game of Thrones. I actually did read the first Game of Thrones book years ago and loved it, 5 stars. But I haven't continued on because I know the series is not finished. And like, here I am, I'm gonna trek through all these long books. I'm sure I'm gonna love them and I'm gonna finish them. And then maybe 5 years down the road, another one gets published, and then, oh my god, are you telling me I've got to reread all of these again to then continue on? I don't know, because recapping is not a thing yet, and it should be. But with The Name of the Wind, this was actually one of the first books that I bought when I got back into reading. I bought The Name of the Wind, and y'all, this was probably my first adult fantasy purchase. And I haven't read it. I have not read it. Another factor is when you're reading out of your comfort zone. So, for instance, I picked up Firefly Lane by Kristen Hanna last year for something. I don't know why I picked this up. I think it fit a prompt, or I had to read it. I can't remember. But I read it. One of my favorite books of last year. So, tell me why I brought this Tenderland by Wim Kent Kruger, who I've heard nothing but great things about, but I have just not picked this up. I have not picked this up because it's not my normal genre. That's why I know, but I may love it. It may be a new favorite. I just need to buckle down and pick it up. What about intimidating books because you loved the first book and then you are terrified to read the second one? This kind of rings true for me, and why I have not read Ocean's Echo yet, because I'm terrified to read this. I haven't heard the best reviews on this one. I loved Winter's Orbit. I gave it 5 stars. One of my favorite books of last year. Here is Ocean's Echo. It's been just languishing on my shelves. I bought it when it came out. I think I pre-ordered it, but here it is. Haven't picked it up yet. In a similar vein to this, Beasts of Extraordinary Circumstances is one of my favorite books of all time. Here it is. Loved it. Haven't heard the best reviews about the Wilder women and haven't picked it up yet. So how long is this going to languish on my shelves before I pick it up? What about books that you just haven't, you've brought, you look forward to, but you just haven't heard the best things about? And that's going to also be Upgrade by Blake Crouch, because I brought this. I'm not a huge Blake Crouch fan anyway. And then when I started hearing, I was willing to give him another shot, but when I started hearing that this wasn't a very good book to a lot of people that liked Blake Crouch, I just got intimidated to read it. And so it sits on my shelves, not being read. What about those series that you've heard jump the shark? There are several of them. Like, I will tell you one that I liked that everybody hates and says jump the shark. And of course, the first book is my favorite. It's going to be A Curse of Dark and Lonely. You know, they say the other two books in the series are trash. I still liked them. I like this one better, but I still like the other two. But how about this series? The Black Prism by Brent Weeks. I hear the later books in the series are just not very good. And so this one sits on my shelves because every time I look at it, I'm intimidated because I have this notion in my head that the later books are not very good, so why am I going to start this one? But then again, you have to tell yourself, then why is this sitting on your shelf? If you're too intimidated to read it, why is it sitting on your shelf? How about those books that are just so popular that they're maybe overhyped in your mind, and so you're terrified to read them because what if they are overhyped? And I'm thinking about the Atlas 6. It's sitting here. I haven't read it yet because I'm afraid it will not live up to the hype. And secondly, how about these books that have been sitting on my shelves for probably, oh my gosh, years, the longest time ever, and that's going to be Cassandra Clare. I have The Clockwork Angel, starter of the series, and I have Lady Midnight, which is the start of this series, The Dark Artifices, The Internal Devices, and I read The Mortal Instruments. It was fine, but nothing to write home about. But then everybody raves about, I know, this series for sure, and other series, and I don't know. These books just sit and they stare at me because are they going to be overhyped? I do not know. Speaking of overhyped books, and a book that has sat on my shelf forever, and probably everybody else is on this bandwagon with me. How many TBRs have I put this on? The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. How many TBRs has this book been on? A lot. Not only is it long, not only have I heard it's very slow going, and that there's a slog in the series. Why is this on my shelves? Am I really going to read this? Tell me, y'all. Is this worth reading? I don't know. What about the book where they tell you that there's no plot? I have it. I want to read it. I'm terrified. Listen, y'all, all these unread books that are on my shelf, I can come across a reason as to why I'm intimidated to read that book. And so it's making me rethink all my life choices. Somebody please make me read these books. Leave down in the comments below if you've read some of these books. Put my mind at ease. I want to read them, but they intimidate me. What makes an intimidating book to you? What are some of your most intimidating reads? I'm sure the page count's going to come up in here. That's probably my most intimidating thing. I don't know. I'm drowning in all these books that have just sat on my shelf for years. There's so much 5-star potential, and Shay will just not pick up the books. Okay, let me know what you find intimidating in the comments below.